So let's rank every WrestleMania. What is going on, everybody? It's the one and only the RETCON Media. We are back, and we are back here with another video. This time, we are going to rank every single WrestleMania. In case you don't know, I am a huge wrestling fan. In case you haven't seen the video of the wrestling game rankings that's on the channel, go ahead, check that out. It's a good video. That's a good video. But this one, we're gonna take this different route. We're gonna rank WrestleManias. You know, it's WrestleMania season coming up on this video. We're on WrestleMania 38 coming up soon, so we're gonna rank WrestleManias. I do want to give a little disclaimer: WrestleMania 37 is not going to be on this tier list. I did watch WrestleMania 37. I thought if I were to put it on this tier list, unfortunately, on the tier list that I did find, WrestleMania 37 was not on here. But if I were to put it on the tier list, it would probably rank on the good ranking. Now that disclaimer is out of the way, let us get right on to let's get right onto it. Let's show our screen. Here we go. Our WrestleMania. Here we go. We have 6 categories: of legendary, great, good, okay, meh, and sucks. So I've been thinking long and hard about each tier and where I'm going to put them, and I think I've ultimately come down to my final consensus on everything. All right, so I think so I've put 5 that are in the tier. I'm going to start with the worst. I'm going to go up to the best. I'm going to start off with the worst. Okay, I'm going to start off with WrestleMania 9. In the worst, WrestleMania 9. In case you don't know, yeah, WrestleMania 9 is pretty bad. I'm a fan of Caesar's Palace, and Jim Ross and Tugos was fun. But other than that, on this program, there isn't exactly much to say. There isn't exactly much on this program. And then you have Hogan in the end of the main event winning, which was kind of a sour thing to do. People were kind of getting sick of Hogan. Hogan was his drawing power was waning. People were starting to get sick of Hogan. And his win at WrestleMania 9 just didn't work well for a lot of people, and I'm one of those people. Okay, next up, WrestleMania 2. Up next, we have WrestleMania 2. Where is it? There it is, right there. WrestleMania 2. Based off the success of the first WrestleMania, they decided to do WrestleMania 2 in 3 different cities. I at least can say this was an interesting idea. I thought it was an interesting idea. I like the concept of it nonetheless. But with that said, 3 WrestleManias in 3 different cities on one night. Yeah, that's not really such a good idea. Not only that, but they tried to divide it because each show had 4 matches, and a lot of these matches didn't go long. The women's title match barely lasted a minute, and then I think there was another match that barely went 2. You had Roddy Piper and Mr. T in that boxing match that ended in a disqualification out of all things. Yeah, and then Hogan and King Kong Bundy was one of the worser WrestleMania main events. So yeah, WrestleMania 2 kind of sucks, in my opinion. Then WrestleMania 2 sucks, and then another WrestleMania that people often consider one of the worst is WrestleMania 11. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of WrestleMania 11 either. I thought WrestleMania 11 was okay. Now, let's be fair. We're going to be fair. I'm going to be fair with it and say this was the mid-90s. WWF. Wrestling was not in a good period in the mid-90s. WWF wasn't doing good. WCW really wasn't doing super good so much either. And WrestleMania 11 is kind of a reflection on one of the time. It's even ranked one of the worst things in wrestling in 1995. So, yeah, it's not a good program. Diesel Michaels was okay. Even the main event. The main event was serviceable with Taylor and Bigelow. I thought that was a fine match. I didn't think it was a main event worthy match, but the match itself was a fine, solid match. Taylor looked good. Taylor looked pretty competent in that match. And I think he could have gotten a longer. I think he maybe could have gotten a few more matches out in his wrestling career. But WrestleMania 11, yeah, it kind of sucked. It sucked. It's not good. And then in modern times, which some people kind of consider our worst WrestleMania in a lot of ways, 27. Oh God, I am not a fan of WrestleMania 27. There are matches I like on 27. Like I like Orton and Punk. I thought that was fine. Undertaker Triple H was also a pretty decent match on the card, but everything else was kind of like you had the whole Jerry Lawler and Michael Cole thing. That was bad. That was entertaining. And then Cena versus Miz, I thought was underwhelming. I thought it could have been a better match than what it was. And Rock interfering, basically in a lot of ways made 27 feel like an afterthought because it really 27. They tried to sell 28 with 27, and 27 just it left a lot more. You left wanting more, but not in the good way. And then I think our final one for the Sucks tier list, our final one. Where is it? There it is. WrestleMania 15. God, 15 is not good. There are not many good matches on 15. You had Road Dogg and Billy Gunn, in case you don't know the story. They were going after different titles, and they both held different titles, and it was a stupid decision. Not only that, but WrestleMania 15, it didn't do it for me. It was not my kind of WrestleMania. People made the assumption that it felt more like an episode of Raw than WrestleMania. I'm in agreement there. Rock Austin main event. Compared to the main events that we would get with 17 and the match that we would get at 19, this match felt kind of inferior compared to those two matches, even though it was the first one, but it wasn't like the other ones. It wasn't really that good, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's my sucks list. 9 to 11, 27, and 15 are the ones I'm going to put in the sucks ranking. Up next is meh. So these are the WrestleManias that there's redeeming qualities that put them out of sucks. And I debated about this one long enough because I almost did put this one in sucks. But ultimately, I decided to settle on meh, and that is 32. Why I decided to put it on meh is because there are some decent moments on 32. Zack Ryder winning the IC title, I thought was a pretty cool moment. The match was even pretty good. The match was even not bad. Once I looked on it again, I thought the match wasn't that bad. I also thought that, everything else was kind of not so much. Like I expected more from AJ Styles and Chris Jericho, especially after that good match they had at Fastlane like a month prior. Like they had a really killer match, and it was a good match. But the WrestleMania match, not so much. And I felt like in a way AJ should have gotten the win there, but that didn't happen. Then it also felt like they were overplaying on the legends. Like they had Rock beat Aaron Rowan in like 6 seconds or so. Like it's just not a good Mania. It's not a good Mania in my opinion. But it's enough, but there's enough there to where you can find some enjoyable moments and it doesn't suck in my opinion. Another one that doesn't suck and another one, in my opinion, that doesn't suck is 25. WrestleMania 25 is meh, in my opinion. It's meh. Yeah, the Miss WrestleMania Battle Royal, and that wasn't really good. It was won by Santina, out of all people. So, yeah, that's not a good look there. And then Triple H versus Randy Orton is it was a very disappointing match, in my opinion. If anything, I think Orton should have won the match, and I think they learned that not long later because they did eventually. Orton did win the belt later on, but he should have won it at Mania, and that's my honest opinion there. I also felt the Jeff Matt Hardy match was. I think the matches they had in TNA were better than this one. Even the Backlash match, I thought was even the Backlash match, the Quit match that they had, I thought that was even better than this match. And even I think they even had like a stretcher match that was even better in my opinion than the WrestleMania match. There is one match that is really good on this show, and it's called Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, probably the greatest WrestleMania match ever in a lot of people's minds. So other than that, yeah, you should check that out. And that's a redeeming match on this card, in my opinion, is that match at WrestleMania 25. Up next, we have the first WrestleMania, WrestleMania 1. WrestleMania 1, oh god, that is not a good show. That is really not a good show. It did, WrestleMania 1, the main reason it's meh, one is legacy, because without WrestleMania 1, we would not have any other WrestleMania. So that alone can save it from sucks, because if that event didn't go down so well. But I think over time, this event really hasn't aged well. This event it just hasn't aged well, if I'm being honest. It was good for the time, but nowadays it definitely feels really outdated compared to some of the other manias. Up next, Twice in a Lifetime, WrestleMania 29. The match nobody wanted to see again, Rock Cena 2. It was okay. It was an okay match, but compared to the 28 match was much better. Especially because everybody going in knew Cena was going to win. So that was already underwhelming there. And plus, this card wasn't really that good. I liked the opener, and I liked Undertaker and CM Punk, but other than that, the matches were kind of meh. Like Triple H versus Brock Lesnar could have gone on like 5 minutes shorter, and it would have been a much better match in my opinion. Ryback versus Mark Henry, Alberto Del Rio versus Jack Swagger, and most of WrestleMania 29, except for Undertaker and CM Punk, was kind of it. All right, and up next we have Wrestle. Next up, we're gonna give a 2 for 1 on this one, and that is going to be WrestleManias 4 and 5. All right, WrestleMania 4. In case you don't know, WrestleMania 4 was mostly a tournament for the vacant WWF title. It also had the Andre Hogan rematch as part of the tournament, and both those men ended in double DQ, which is kind of not good considering the fact that you're advertising both these two on your main posters for it. But not only that, but most of the matches aren't that good, because they're kind of rushed in a way, because there's like 15 or 16 matches to go through, because it's a one-night tournament. And I think a one-night tournament isn't necessarily a bad thing. Survivor Series, I think 98 was for the better part of the show a one-night tournament, but it was a good top to bottom program. It told the story well. WrestleMania 4 told the story fine. Like you felt good for Savage winning the belt, but then Hogan comes out and it's not so good. And then WrestleMania 5, there's not much really here that's super memorable about WrestleMania 5, except for Hogan and Savage finally colliding. And they did a good job with long-term storytelling here, which I have to give them that. But other than that, there's not much to really redeem WrestleMania's 4 and 5. They're kind of right there. Up next, WrestleMania. Let's see, where is it? WrestleMania 2000. WrestleMania 2000. This show only had one singles match, and it wasn't even the main event. Yeah, that was an interesting experiment there, and I'm all for getting more people on the card. But I just felt none of the matches were all that great. The main event, McMahon in every corner, was, I think, an unnecessary gimmick for an unnecessary match. Plus, it didn't really make any sense in some cases, the McMahon in every corner really didn't need it. The Fatal 4-Way itself was okay, but it's not anything to write home about, in my opinion. I think the show would have been better if it was just Rock and Triple H in the main event, or even Rock, Triple H, and I know they were talking about even Jericho. That would have been better, I think, than the McMahon in every corner. So, yeah, not only that, but you do get but there is one match I really like, and that is the Triangle Ladder match between the Hardys, Dudley's, Nature Christian. That is a pretty entertaining match, in my opinion, and it's a match that I do recommend you do check out. It's a match people sleep on because the match they had at 17 was much better than the one that they had at 16. But the match they had at 16, that Triangle Ladder match, was pretty good, in my honest opinion. It was pretty good. All right, and then let me see. And then we have two more to close them out. And it's kind of the same boat. I'm kind of in the same boat with WrestleMania 7 and WrestleMania 8. We got another duo here. WrestleMania 7, WrestleMania 8. WrestleMania 7, in my opinion, is it's all right. It's actually, no, it's not. It's not all right. It's not really something memorable, in my opinion. The only memorable thing is the Hogan Slaughter match, and even that match, in my opinion, it was one of the more underwhelming Hogan main events. But then you get to WrestleMania 8, and you have Sid and Hogan and Papa Shango versus you. It was not good. It was bad. That match was bad. That match was a bad match. And I think that will do it for my med tier. Up next is the okay tier. So these are WrestleManias that I thought were okay. And I'll start off with WrestleMania 10. We recently just lost Scott Hall, or Razor Ramon, RIP. If you haven't watched Razor Ramon versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 10, what are you doing with your life? Because without that match, we wouldn't get any other ladder match at WrestleMania. And most WrestleMania ladder matches are for the Intercontinental title in some regards. I know there's been talks of WWE doing the Razor Ramon ladder match every year at WrestleMania for the Intercontinental title. And that would be honestly a good thing, in my opinion, because that match, his legacy, holds on to ladder matches this day. Some people still consider it as one of the best, if not the best ladder match that ever happened. So that, that alone puts it right here. Not only that, but you also get Brett versus Yokozuna, which also, in my opinion, I don't think it was as good as their match at WrestleMania 9, but I thought it was a serviceable match in its own right. I was glad to see Brett win the title on WrestleMania 10. But other than that, there's not really much on the show. I think this is the last time Savage was on a Mania, if I'm correct, was WrestleMania 10. But I'm not going to bet on it 100% of the way. But yeah, that's my thoughts on WrestleMania 10. It's okay. And another one, in my opinion, that's okay, WrestleMania 23. So WrestleMania 23 is memorable for one thing, and that is Battle of the Billionaires. Bobby Lashley and Umaga, the Battle of the Billionaires match. That match was okay for what it was. That match was okay. There are a few good matches on the show. Like Cena Michaels was a good match in my opinion. And I also thought Batista Undertaker was fine for what it was. The ladder match, the Money in the Bank ladder match 23, was okay. I don't think it was better than some of the other ladder matches that we got before them, or even would get in the future. But I think out of all the Money in the Bank ladder matches, this one was the worst one, in my opinion. I just wasn't a fan of that match. I just didn't think it was a good match compared to some of the other ladder matches you get. And that sucks because it had Matt Hardy, and Edge in that match. And it was, and part of me is wondering, how did you go wrong with that? But it just, mainly they took them out. before the match. Like, not even before the match, but like in the middle of the match. So like that already just felt underwhelming right there, and it just wasn't that good in my opinion. I think for 23 in that match, and then you also had Kane and the Great Khali, which was this wasn't good. Like I said, the matches that are worth watching are Cena and Michaels and Batista and Undertaker. Those two matches are great matches on the show, in my opinion. And speaking of 23, let's put its predecessor, 22. The ladder match in 22 I thought was better than the match at 23. But there's not much on 23 that's really entertaining to me. Michaels McMahon was okay, and then Undertaker versus Mark Henry is not one of the better streak matches, in my opinion. I didn't think it was one of the better streak matches. Cena versus Triple H was fine. And yeah, like there's nothing really too memorable about 22 in the long run when you really think about it, which is kind of why it's just okay in my opinion. Speaking of, all right, up next, I have 3 WrestleManias I can put right here. 12, 13, and 14. I thought were just okay. The WrestleMania 12 is in my opinion, is really a one-match show, and that match was the 60-minute Iron Man match between Michaels and Brett. That match was okay. Some people feel like it went too long. I can understand. So mainly because they had them go an hour and nobody got a point so they had to go into sudden death. Which if that's the case, if you're going to go to sudden death, why have an Iron Man match? But other than that, the card really isn't super memorable, except for Undertaker versus Diesel, which was the best streak match up to this point, in my opinion, was Undertaker Diesel. Because Undertaker Bloody at WrestleMania 11 wasn't super good, in my opinion. But Undertaker versus Diesel was a pretty competent. It was a not bad match. It wasn't like the matches that we would get later on with Michaels and Triple H, but for what that match was, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. It was an enjoyable match. And then you have WrestleMania 13, which WrestleMania 13 probably is the most renowned WrestleMania match. We go unedited here on RETCON Media. Was probably one of the better known regarded WrestleMania matches from Bret and Shawn. Oh, wait, no, not Bret and Shawn. Hart and Austin. Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13. Like I said, we go ended in on RETCON Media. Bret Hart and Steve Austin at WrestleMania 13 was stellar. It is probably the best double turn in wrestling, in my opinion, is Bret and Austin. Because if it wasn't for that match, you wouldn't get face Stone Cold. Or it probably still would have gotten it, but this match definitely helped speed it up. And then 14, we have the culmination of the Stone Cold arc. We have Stone Cold's championship culmination with him winning the title from Shawn. That alone, made it, an appealing show. But everything else, but like these shows really have one match to them in a lot of ways, in my opinion. Everything else is kind of okay, kind of forgettable, in my opinion. And then speaking of one match shows, I got to put it in here, WrestleMania 6. That is a one match show, Hogan Warrior. For what that match was, that was a good match. So, yeah. So now we go into the good tier. So this is when we get to start. This is when we get into the good WrestleMania. This is when we get into the good WrestleMania, in my opinion. We got some really great hitters. Up here. And to start, let's start off with the first WrestleMania. I remember watching live, and that is WrestleMania 28. WrestleMania 28. It was the first WrestleMania I remember watching live. And to be honest, it was a it's underestimated in certain matches in my opinion. Like people sleep on Chris Jericho versus CM Punk at WrestleMania 28. That was a great match. That was a really good match in my opinion. Rock versus Cena, the first match was epic. That was epic. Nothing. Just it was an epic match. The wrestling itself, if you look at the match, the wrestling itself, you're probably gonna think the match was okay. But if you just get the story, like the story and the build for WrestleMania 28 was probably the biggest build because I think this is still the most bought WrestleMania of all time. Like this was a big deal, and not only that, but like the match was epic. We also had Undertaker versus Triple H inside Hell in a Cell. That match, I was a fan of it, but as time went on, I wasn't as much as a fan of it. Like I was with 27. I thought the match 27 was better put together. I think they went a little overboard in the booking with 28. I think it was a little overbooked, especially because they had the Hell in a Cell and was the end of the era. And it turns out that was not even true because then they had a match like 6 or 7 years later in in Australia for the last time ever with Super Showdown, which was kind of a pointless match, if you ask me. And then they went on to have another match. Then they went on with Triple H, and then they had Shawn Michaels come out of retirement to the match of Crown Jewel, which I think everyone can admit that was a bad decision. But 28 is a pretty good show. There's hidden gems in 28, in my opinion. There's some hidden gems in 28 that are worth a watch. Up next is 34. 34 is probably one of my favorite WrestleMania sets. It's one of my favorite WrestleMania sets. It's WrestleMania 34. The New Orleans vibe. They did it really good with 30, but I thought 34 did it just a little better. The opening match for the triple threat for the IC title, I enjoyed that match. That was one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite openers for WrestleMania because that was a really good opener. You also had Undertaker versus Cena, that short squash match. That was a shocking moment. That was a good moment, in my opinion, on this show. I also liked Ronda Rousey and Kurt Angle versus Stephanie and Triple H for what it was. That was a fun match. That was a fun and enjoyable match. AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura didn't live up to its hype, in my opinion. I thought compared to the matches they had in New Japan, this match was not as good. And Brock versus Roman was not good here, in my opinion. They're facing off the main event this year, WrestleMania 38, and I think that match is going to be better. It's got to be better than this one, because this one was bad. This match their main event match here was not good, and if you ask me, in my honest opinion. Up next in this tier, we have WrestleMania 36. So this show, this took on during the COVID pandemic, during the when the COVID pandemic really kind of started. This was the WrestleMania we got like a month into it. Considering the limitations and considering what they did with this show, it was a good show. Now, are there matches here that didn't deserve to be on the card? Aleister Black, Bobby Lashley? Yes. But are there also matches like the Boneyard match between Undertaker and AJ Styles, the Firefly Funhouse segment with Cena and Bray Wyatt? That was entertaining. That was entertaining for what it was. You also had Drew McIntyre's culmination here at 36. That was on night 2. So I think, and Charlotte versus Rhea was actually I thought that was a decent match, although I don't think Charlotte should have won the match. That was a pretty decent match right there. So this Mania had some pretty good matches. This Mania had some good matches. It's an underestimated Mania. You should people should look back on that. Same for Mania 35. The opener with Seth and Brock was great. That was a great opener. That was a great way to open the show. It was a fun way to open the show. The main event of the match, the women's main event between Charlotte, Ronda, Becky. By then, people were born out of the show, and also the botched pin kind of not as good. But WrestleMania 35 is a good show. But with that said, there's a lot of good moments here in WrestleMania 35. You have Kofi's culmination, him winning the WWE title. That was a great, that was a great build up moment. That's here in Mania 35, and that was really good in my opinion. And then I think my last one for the good column, good old WrestleMania 26. Now, am I the biggest WrestleMania 26 fan? No. But I have to admit, WrestleMania 26 is not bad. I have to admit it. I think Cena and Batista wasn't as good as it could have been. I think it went on a little too short for it to be a really decent match. But that match was fine. I also thought the Legacy Triple Threat was fine between Orton, DiBiase, and Rhodes. That was fine. Triple H versus Sheamus, I could care less about that. There's one match that this program's worth mentioning, and that is Undertaker versus Shawn. The rematch from 25, which it's not better than their match at 25, but it's a pretty good match. But it's pretty good. It's a really good match. It picked up right where 25 left off, and it was a good match for what it was. It was a great way to end Shawn's career for those 8 years. All right, but now I think with that said, we are going to head into the great, and these are the WrestleManias that I think are really, really good. And to start off with our great list, I'm going to start off with WrestleMania 31. I liked WrestleMania 31. WrestleMania 31 was a fun program. I liked. There's one moment that WrestleMania 31 there are two moments that WrestleMania 31 will always be remembered for, and they both involve the same person. That person being Seth Rollins. One for that epic RKO he got in his match with Randy Orton, and two, him cashing in Money in the Bank in the main event between Rock and Roman to win the title. That was probably one of my more mark-out moments as a wrestling fan, was right at this event at WrestleMania 31. And what can I say about it? It was that match, those two moments are just legendary in its own right. I also thought on this card, Cena versus Rusev, I thought that was a pretty decent match. It sucks Rusev didn't beat Cena. He did, I think, the month prior at Fastlane. I think if he really beat Cena at WrestleMania, it would have cemented Rusev and would have gotten him much further than what he eventually did get. But that match was not that. It was a serviceable WrestleMania. It was a serviceable U.S. title match at WrestleMania, if anything. And then it later brought the Cena U.S. Open Challenge, which is probably one of the better moments of WWE in 2015 altogether. So you have to give that match credit for it. You also have to look at Sting versus Triple H, which I thought it was okay. I didn't like the WCW guys helping Sting because, in continuity wise, that makes no sense. I didn't like the NWO guys helping Sting because that didn't make any sense because the NWO wasn't there to help Sting, really, because they were foes. So why are they helping him out now all of a sudden? And I also thought Undertaker versus Bray Wyatt, in my opinion, was not that good. But everything else, like Daniel Bryan winning the IC title here, was a great moment. And Rock and the Rock and the Ronda Rousey segment with George Stephanie was a good moment. There are good moments within WrestleMania 31, but I don't think I could put it legendary. It's just it's a great show in my opinion, but just not up there with the other ones in terms. And another one that kind of fits that same category for me is WrestleMania 21. For starters, when I saw the WrestleMania 21 set, the first time I saw it, I'm like, oh, compared to what we got with 19 and 20, 21 felt disappointing. Like, there are matches, I like most of the WrestleMania 21 card. Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio was a fun opener. In my opinion. I think give it 2 or 3 more minutes, it would have been something really, really great. But for what we got, it was pretty good. Pretty good opener. We also got on this card the first Money in the Bank ladder match, which in some people's minds still ranks as the best Money in the Bank ladder match to some people. And that was entertaining. That was a good match. You also had Undertaker versus Randy Orton, which to that point was the best streak match that ever happened. To that point was this match at 21. That was the best streak match to ever happen. Then there's also Batista. There's also Batista Triple H, which for a main event was okay. It's not a match that people talk about a whole lot, but it's a match that actually isn't too bad. It's not that bad of a match. If you go back and watch it, it's not that bad of a match. Same thing for Cena and JBL. These matches are somewhat forgettable, but they're not bad. They both have a big culminating moment in them because they both culminated Cena and Batista on that night. So that really kind of set in the new generation in a lot of ways, like the next wave of the new generation in 21 with this aggression era. Up next, we have WrestleMania 24. A WrestleMania people sleep on, in my honest opinion. WrestleMania 24 is a really good Mania, if you ask me. I think it's really good. Undertaker versus Edge, in my opinion, is the best match on the card. It's probably the best, and somehow it was the best streak match up to this point, in my opinion. It was a good match. Edge being able to have a way to counter almost everything of Undertaker's, only to just get caught in the Hell's Gate at the near end. That was a great, spectacular match. Big Show and Floyd Mayweather was a really entertaining match. And then the triple threat between Cena, Randy, and Triple H I thought that was fine. It was serviceable. But compared to the other stuff on the card, we had Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair. That was a very emotional match for a lot of people. And yeah, that's my thoughts on WrestleMania 24. It's one of those manias where you have to look at it again. Up next, I think I'll go WrestleMania 33. What keeps this mania out of legendary is the fact that it was a chore to watch. Oh my God, this was a long mania. But there are great moments in this mania. Brock versus Goldberg, much better than the WrestleMania 20 match. Really great. Really fast-paced, high-octane match. We also had the return of the Hardys on this card. They won the Raw Tag House of the Fatal 4-Way Ladder match. That was a good match. That was a really entertaining match. I enjoyed watching that. Roman Reigns versus Undertaker. The moment itself was a big, impactful moment. The match itself was kind of forgettable, but the moment when Roman Reigns pinned The Undertaker is a moment that shocked everybody, and everybody just went, holy shit, what the fuck did we just watch? That's good storytelling right there. That is good storytelling right there. It doesn't get much better than that. There are clunkers on this show, like Orton versus Wyatt for the WWE title was a clunker, a real clunker on this show. But AJ Styles versus Shane McMahon was a really good match to open the show, in my opinion. So there are some good matches on 33. There are some good matches, but there also are some clunkers. 33 is a really entertaining show from top to bottom, in my opinion. And my last mania to go in my great list, and this might shock a lot of people, but WrestleMania 18. Icon versus Icon. Rock Hogan. What much more can be said about that? The match itself, if you're in it for the, if you like wrestling for the wrestling itself, this isn't your match. But if you liked it for the story and for everything they did to get you into this match, it was an enjoyable, fun match. A match where Rock played the heel, as much as people don't want to say it, because Toronto just couldn't boo Hulk Hogan. Rock had to play heel for this match. And the fact that he was able to switch the role between face and heel just like that in that match was nothing short of amazing. But other than that, there's stuff like Austin Hall, which didn't really care a whole much about. And then Undertaker versus Flair, kind of in the same boat. That wasn't really one of the better streak. That's not one of the better remembered streak matches in a lot of ways. But WrestleMania 18 is, you definitely should watch it. You definitely should watch it. I do recommend that you take a look and you watch it. The last WrestleMania to ever be under the WWF banner, and boy, what a way it was to go out. In a lot of ways. Now we get to my top 5. Now we get to my top 5 manias. And in my top 5, I start off with WrestleMania 3. Because WrestleMania 3, the Hulk Hogan Under the Giant match there are 2 matches on this card that give it this legendary spot because they've held up. One being Hulk Hogan and Under the Giant, the other being Randy Savage versus Ricky Steamboat for the Intercontinental title. The Randy Savage Ricky Steamboat Intercontinental title, some people still consider that the best Intercontinental title match to ever exist. So that alone puts this match in legendary to be remembered just like that. I also, and then also the Hogan Andre match was that match for what it was, for what they did with it, was really enjoyable. And plus, if you hear about Andre's condition that he was in, and the fact that he was able to perform the way he was at Mania 3 just says a lot to how good that match was. My next one to enter, that's my top 5. My top 4 is WrestleMania 30. This, out of all the modern WrestleManias, is probably my favorite one. This is probably my favorite modern WrestleMania. It had the Daniel Bryan arc. It had the streak coming to an end. A moment that I don't think should have happened, but when it happened, everybody gasped. Everybody lost their shit. Because it's that big of a moment. It's that epic of a thing to happen. But not only that, you had good, you had good matches. Like Cena versus Wyatt was a pretty decent match. Cesaro winning the Battle Royal was a fun moment here on the program. Like, there's not really a bad match on this program. Like, I could have gone without the Divas match. I could have gone without the Divas title match on this program, but everything else wasn't bad. There wasn't a bad, really, moment so much on Mania 30, in my true opinion. Up next, these 3 you can put almost somewhat in any order because some people like these ones over the others. But my order is WrestleMania 20, because WrestleMania 20 is like one of my favorite Manias. Sometimes even I say it's my favorite. But like WrestleMania 20 is just such an enjoyable top to bottom card. You start off with Cena and the Big Show, which was a decent match in my opinion. And then we also had the Cruiserweight Open, which could have gone, I think, a little bit long, was fine. But then the 2 tag team matches on the show, mainly the SmackDown, mainly the Raw and SmackDown tag title matches, they were kind of forgettable. They were forgettable on the show. They weren't anything special. You also had Lesnar and Goldberg, which sucked. Lesnar and Goldberg, that match sucked. If I'm being honest, that match plain up sucked. But it almost doesn't matter. It almost doesn't matter because you don't think about that match too much, if you ask me, in my opinion. Because the match itself was, match itself was boring, but it didn't help that the fans in Madison Square Garden were actively revolting the match in the way they were. So yeah, it doesn't really help it so much. But WrestleMania 20 is an enjoyable show, especially the Triple H Shawn Michaels Benoit main event. That match just was an epic. That match was an epic. Then comes WrestleMania 19. And WrestleMania 19 is a great card in my opinion. I think WrestleMania 19 is a really great card. You have a really great WrestleMania here. Brock Angle main event is probably one of my favorite WrestleMania main events of all time. You also have Rey Mysterio and Matt Hardy open up the show, and the match they had was a pretty decent match. You have Hogan McMahon on here. That match for what it was fun. That was a fun match for what it was. You have the Rock Austin match, which some argue is better than the 17 match. I think their 17 match was better, but I think their 19 match told a better story going into it. I think the story was better for 19. And for that to be Stone Cold's last match, that's a pretty good way. That's a really good way to go out. And then 17. What else can be said about 17? It's everybody's favorite WrestleMania. You ask everybody what their favorite WrestleMania is, more than likely they'll say 17. 17 is that good, if I'm being honest. It's just that good. You have the TLC 2 match, which was really good. You have the TLC 2 match, which is probably one of my favorite ladder matches, and it's given us one of the most replayed spots in the company's history with the spear from Edge, on Jeff Hardy. That's a selling point there. You have Austin Rock 2, which is the best Austin Rock match in their WrestleMania trilogy. You had Shane and Vince. For what it was, I didn't think it needed WCW. I don't think they needed to include WCW in it, but they did. It was fine. And I love watching 17. I really love watching it. It's a great WrestleMania in my opinion. It's a great WrestleMania. It's the greatest. It's called the greatest for a reason. If you haven't watched WrestleMania 17 and you're a wrestling fan, what are you doing with your life? That's really all I can say about it because it's just that good. It's just that incredible of a show in my opinion. But that's going to do it for this list. So Legendary, we have 3, 30, 20, 19, and 17. Great, we have 31, 21, 24, 33, and 18. Good, 28, 34, 36, 35, and 26. Okay, we have 10, 23, 22, 12, 13, 14, and 6. Meh. We have 32, 25, the first one, 29, 4, 5, 2000, 7, and 8. And then sucks. We have 9, 2, 11, 27, and 15. Those are my WrestleMania rankings. Thank you for watching. If you've stayed to watch this long, I certainly do give you a thank you for watching. We hope that you'll check out more content on the RETCON channel. And that's it. So long, everybody. Peace out.